This year, healing has a sound, transformation has a story, and your breakthrough has a seat waiting for you. On Saturday, February 28, 2026, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., join us at Ujima Socials in Dallas, Texas, for the powerful Keeping It All Together, Becoming Who God Called Me to Be Women's Conference. A movement birthed from the memoir that's already changing lives. Keeping It All Together, Healing and Becoming Who God Called Me to Be. The story, the testimony, the ministry, and now, the conference. Experience 4 dynamic speakers who will pour, teach, and pull you into your next level. Be inspired by our keynote speaker, minister and author, Stephanie M. Seaton, as she delivers a message straight from the throne room. This is your moment to breathe again, to release what's been weighing you down, to rediscover the woman God designed before the world tried to break her. 2026 is your year, and Stephanie's personal motto declares it boldly: no more holding back. So don't hold back your healing. Don't hold back your growth. Don't hold back your transformation. Reserve your seat today. Step into the room where healing happens, sisterhood thrives, and destiny calls you by name. The Keeping It All Together Conference. Because when God puts you back together, you don't just survive, you rise. Thanks for joining us for a new episode of the My Brother's Keeper podcast, where we share stories of survival, healing, and restoration. This is a safe space for men to open up about their journeys, featured on the Stephanie M. Seaton Sunday Show YouTube channel every 4th Sunday at 7 p.m., with our host Melvin Bruce Lee and our dedicated podcast team.
Well, good evening and welcome to the My Brother's Keepers podcast, a safe platform, a safe space for men to come together and discuss those difficult topics, those things that we don't oftentimes open up about. But here on this safe platform, we're going to do just that, having the wonderful conversations that we thoroughly enjoy having every 4th Sunday of the month. So we look forward to this opportunity each time to, again, pour into our brothers and understanding the pains, the hurts, the challenges that we all go through in life. Joining us this evening with our illustrious panel, we got our brother Pastor Maurice with us in the building this evening, Pastor Ricardo in the building with us this evening, our brother Carl Roberts, the motivator, and our show's host, Mr. Melvin Bruce Lee, is in the building this evening. So I hope you guys are ready for an exciting time together and to pour into our audience this evening. Our topic for this evening is going to be fatherless fathers, when God gathers the sons who were never covered. So many of us, unfortunately, have had to deal with this, but nevertheless, it's something that's very real, something that we need to talk about, something that we need to dive deep into, and we're going to do just that tonight. So with that said, thank you, brothers, for being with us this evening. Thank you to our listening audience, and I'm going to turn it over to our host, Brother Melvin Bruce Lee.
Bless you, brother. Bless you. How you guys doing?
Great.
Good. Great. Wonderful.
Good. I apologize for my tardiness. Work calls, so had to answer that call. That got to make sure I take care of that window mail, them bills. So,
Absolutely.
of course, I had to go ahead and work. Man, great topic today, man. And I kind of, we got a script, but I'm not always a good person to follow a script. I kind of like to see what our hearts and our minds says about this, because I can think back growing up, and y'all kind of excuse me. Like I said, I am at work. You may hear some things. I'm gonna try to mute it as possible sometimes, but I do have some little noise in the background. But I can think back growing up. I wanted to go fishing and do different things with my dad, but I never was able to. I got a chance to do, but as I got into the adult life, that's some of the things that I wanted to share with my kids, in which I was able to do a lot with my daughter, not per se much with my son, because his mother moved quite a bit and stayed a pretty far distance away. And I think it's so important as men, we want to not only teach our kids, but I call them our extended kids. They don't have to be blood to be kin, and I think it's important that we look at doing that. And I'm gonna back up. I don't know if we did we start with prayer, brother. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we did
Did we
we did
lead
our
off
prayer.
in
We
prayer?
we
And I
got prayed up
apologize
before we jumped
for
on live. We
not doing it. I
covered.
know I was late.
No, you good.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hear you.
Yeah. Did we start out in prayer? So I don't want to be. I want to make sure I acknowledge
Yes, we
my
did.
father.
Yeah, we
Okay. All
started
right.
our
Yep, we're covered.
Okay. Great. Great. And I'm not sure who's all on. I see a few faces, but man, it's so important as believers. We want to do what we can to breathe life into people. Do what we can to, because if you look at our society today, we teach our young men to be dependent, and we teach our girls to be independent. My prayer and my wishes, my hope, uh, and what my goal and plan to do. I want to do everything I can within my reach or my breath to change that philosophy, to change the narrative. And I think it takes people like us. And I've been blessed to be on a couple of other calls these last few weeks, and a lot of these young men are on a call. A lot of them are not church, but it was so interesting just to hear them say how important it for them was to get on a call and listen to other men. And we didn't, it wasn't about browbeating them with scripture. It was about, that iron sharpened iron and trying to point them in the right direction. Like I said, we don't, me, I have a philosophy or just a narrative. I always say I don't try to lead with scripture because I'm a Bible myself. So if you read me and if you get an understanding of me, I'm going to point you to who I believe in. And you'll be curious on how I'm able to do or say the things I do because of my belief in my Heavenly Father. And I think it's so important because I don't want to be holier than thou that I'm no earthly good. I want to reach and teach many as people as possible. What you guys think about that? I don't want to get too deep into it. I just want to share some insight. What about you, brother Joseph?
Yeah, I think we're good with that. I mean, obviously, we are a faith based podcast, so we're not going to
Who's that? Pastor?
sugarcoat or deny God's presence and how He moves, particularly with the subject matter that we're talking about tonight. Because I think one of the things that we all know on this panel is that even if there wasn't a physical, biological father present in our respective homes or whatever, there's always been a heavenly Father that's been there all along. So we don't want to dismiss that. We don't want to sugarcoat that or anything of that nature. And I don't think we plan on doing that this evening. But at the same time, to our listeners, we do want you to understand that while we are men of faith, we understand that sometimes you just need to have some open, real, raw conversations, and and it's not, like you said, it's not about trying to show off how many scriptures we know and that nature, but more importantly, just having those honest conversations and being open about it tonight. Because again, what we're talking about this evening is men learning how to become fathers, leaders, healed sons without ever having a father to show them how, and discovering that God Himself is the one who steps in to gather what was missing. So, again, we on pace, brother Melvin, and I think we're going to be good to go this evening with our conversation flow. So,
I'm actually, like I said, I'm working as I'm on this call. But I think it's so important as men we be able to share some things and enlighten some folks that maybe that could be having some issues. I think we, like I said, iron sharpens iron, and it's important that we do what we can when we can, where we can, to assist others, so they'll be able to hopefully not uh, maybe experience some of the same thing we experience. Do you have any other gentlemen want to chime in on that one?
Well, I'll jump back in again. Again, like you said, my brother, what we're talking about tonight, this episode is about what happens when God gathers men who were never fathered and teaches them how to become fathers anyway. God is using us this evening to step in accordingly to do just that. And like I said, I think we're on the right path for this, and I'm excited about our conversation this evening. So we want to make sure that we stay the course, we stay locked in, we stay focused, and get to the meat of the matter this evening, because like I said, we got a lot to discuss. And Brother Melvin, I think this would be a great time for us to jump right on in. Let's kind of set the foundation. I know Brother Melvin is having some technical difficulties, but just to set the scriptural foundation. And again, we're not going to beat you down with the word tonight, but we do want to establish that foundation. And it begins with Psalm 68:5, which says, "A father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God in his own holy dwelling." So again, our talking point this evening is that God does not ignore the absence. He feels it. And this is what it's about this evening. We're going to talk about filling that gap. What we're doing here this evening, the whole purpose of this podcast is for us brothers to come together to fill that gap. So I think we should go ahead and jump on into this conversation and get to our first question for this evening. Just kind of set the tone for what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Okay.
That sound good, brothers? We ready for that?
Oh yeah, I love this. This is a good topic. This is a good topic. This is probably one of the best in the topics that you can have. Is this fatherless topic? I think we all go through things
Some
like.
reason I don't know sound.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think we all go through things like this. Even not just only males, the females go through it too. But like this upbringing thing for fathers leads you all the way through your life and your upbringing. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Any other brothers want to chime in? Dr. Maurice, what you hope that we accomplish this evening as we enter into this conversation?
Man, I think it's going to be very inspirational to men to know that it was okay that if you didn't have a father, and how God steps in. And I love that our talking point is that God doesn't ignore the absence, but yet He feels it, and that's so very true. That God does feel the absence of those that are fatherless. But I think also this will be very helpful even for those individuals who may be younger, right? While we may be talking about those that God had to help become fathers, we can even talk about those young men who are dealing with not having the presence of their father there. And how God will do just like He has done many others and gather them together to teach them how to be fathers, but also teach you how to be the man of God that God has purposed you to be in the earth realm. And so I'm grateful to God that the word of God does teach us according to scripture, that God doesn't ignore the absence, but yet He feels it.
Absolutely.
That's right.
How about you, Pastor Ricardo? What are you looking forward to this evening that we need to be delving in? What's your takeaway for this evening that you're hoping to accomplish?
And I want to add that even though there are many, such as myself, that did not have father figure in the home at one period of time, it still reminds me of young Timothy. Young Timothy was raised by mother, grandmother, mostly, and God sent Paul into his life, and so there are areas where God will send
men into other young men's lives to help them, to mentor them, to be who they need to be in Christ, need to be in far as society is concerned. And so God, like Pastor McMillian said, God is never absent. He's never absent. He's always present. It just depends on how much we want to seek him, even as young men.
Well, Pastor Ricardo, I think something that you just said is very interesting, and I think we should build on that. Again, with our listening audience this evening, if you would tell us what did growing up as a father, I should say, growing up without a father, what did being a man look like for you? I know some of our other brothers here on the panel this evening didn't necessarily have our dads in the home, or perhaps some of us might have had experience where we knew of our father, we knew where he is, but he wasn't directly active in our life. So, what did that look like for you? Are you able to hear me, Pastor Ricardo? I think we're having a little brief technical difficulty. Pastor Ricardo, let me jump to you. I'll jump back to you. Well, actually, let me jump to Brother Carl. What did being a man look like to you when you were growing up? I don't know what your situation was as far as dad in the home or not in the home, but what did being a man look like for you?
Growing up, for me, it was kind of, it was a man. My dad was in the home, but he wasn't. He was in the streets. So that made me go by myself. For him not being there, he was providing for the family. Paying the house note and things like that. But as far as being there and coming to games and just talking to and giving encouragement or just that conversation, we didn't get the conversation, and so we would have to learn. I learned from just watching other people, because I made a lot of mistakes during my life, by not having a father, anything like that in my life. So really, to me, it was like my mom ran in my aunt. So I did make a lot of mistakes. I learned the things I learned was from the streets. So that's that took me on a different path till I can till I felt and I knew that God had my back. So me coming up since I was 7 years old, my father, Heavenly Father, had my back. So I already knew somebody was there for me. So it was God. So I think that took everything that I needed to go to the next level. And that's all I needed. But on the earthly father, like my dad, I was always looking for it and always reaching for that, which I didn't get, at the time. Even to the day, it's like you stumbling through life, trying to figure it out. But he still put me around positive men, like on this podcast tonight. He always put me around positive people that knew God, people that knew scriptures, people that tell you the truth, and positive people. So I kind of went towards things like that. That's why I'm on this podcast. Stephanie allowed me to be on this podcast, and when she had this podcast and asked me to be on, I'm like, the first episode, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I'm at home. So when I feel like I'm at home, that makes me go to the next level. That's a big thing for me. So being that father's father, not having one, and listen to you guys, speaking your words, and I go off of sight. So when I see people like Melvin, Mr. Roberts, and the other cats and other guys on the panel, it inspires me to go to the next level. It inspires me to get my life in order, because we don't have that. And I'm glad we have a conversation like this, because this might be somebody coming up like I did, a younger brother that don't know, and he might hear one little word that I'm saying, or somebody else that's on this panel that's saying that put them in the right directions to keep them out of the penitentiaries, to keep them out of things like that, or get them out of trouble. Because as being a minority, black male, it's all against us. It's set up for us to get to fail. So that's a big thing for us to encourage, one another. That's what Rise and Elevate is about. That's why, I do Rise and Elevate, my podcast. That's why I'm a motivator, because I want to teach the next one, bring the next one up, let them know, that it's all right, be that big brother figure, that father figure for them to be something in their life. I don't want them to say I didn't know. I want them to say, yeah, he told me, I just didn't listen.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing that. I think your perspective is very important, considering the fact that we do have scenarios where, while some young men grow up with their dad not being present, there's other young men who dad was technically in the home, but physically being around and presence is not one and the same. And so you said, hey, my dad was out in the streets, he's doing his thing, whether it was working, whether it was getting into other stuff, and you still needed to have those male figures, those male role models to pour into you. And so it's good to know that, as you stated, there were men that God placed into your life that kind of was able to pour into you, to guide your steps, to perhaps keep you off of those paths that was going to, that would have otherwise potentially sent you down ways that you might have not been able to recover from, which again goes back to our opening scripture as to how God can fill that gap when your earthly father is not either physically present or his presence is missing. How about you, Dr. Maurice?
Yeah, I
What would
think
be your stance on that?
for me, my stepfather, which I don't call stepfather, I call him my father. I had a preacher friend of mine say, "Listen, you call those men who stepped out of your life stepfathers because they stepped, right?" And he said, that if a man steps in your life, even if he's not your blood, then you allow him to be a father to you. And I thank God for my father, who is a blessed memory now, that he was present in my life. I'm kind of like Brother Roberts here. He, while he worked, right, he was a chef and he worked, but his presence was still there when needed. One of the things that I'm grateful for is growing up in the church at a young age, that there were other men that whatever my stepfather, my father could not provide for me, that spiritual aspect and even manly aspect, there were men in my church that invested in me. Still to this day, I thank God for some of the blessed memories of men in my church home, my home church in New Orleans, Louisiana, that are now, like I said, a blessed memory now, that really took the time to deal with me. And then I had pastors. I had pastors that were father figures, that while they were fathers in the ministry, I looked at them as father figures as well, who really invested in me. But I want to say something to what Brother Carl said. And because so many men that I pray that this podcast is reaching will need to know that while your presence is needed, it does not take the place of your presence being in the place. And sometimes we will allow the presence of what we give, such as taking care of bills, to think that that's substantial enough for to be absent, when that's not the case. You can never replace one's presence with the presence that you give, and thinking that that's okay, because at the end of the day, the presence that we receive from people, from men, from our fathers, we appreciate, but it never can compare to when we can talk about when our father was present. And so I hope that this is being reached to so many men that will need to understand. Don't think because you are the provider that should be that should be substantial enough for you to say, okay, I can be absent because I'm providing. No, provision needs to be still made, while also being present need to be made, because at the end of the day, children will say, they will not say, I remember when my dad bought me, right? Because there's so many things that you buy them. So that has a tendency to be absent, the memory of that. But you will always find children who are saying that when I had that football game, or when I had that recital, when I had that whatever it was, my dad showed up, because presence sometimes speaks louder than the presence that we give.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that's a very valid point. And I love that you are highlighting presence. And as you were speaking, it kind of triggers another question for me that I think we need to dig a little bit deeper on, is just to actually define what presence, the presence of that father figure being in the home. What does actually does that look like? We speak about that a lot. My dad wasn't present, but again, if he was physically present in the home, or if you did have some type of relative access to him, what do you think men's expectation of presence means? If we had to define presence, what does presence look like? Because and this is one of those topics that as men we don't oftentimes delve into, because you know some men would say, well, yeah, my dad, he was present in the home, but maybe it was only present in telling me that I had to walk and talk a certain way, or I had to defend myself, or whatever. Some men would define that as presence. Some other men would define presence as, could you go to your dad in your most vulnerable and hurt position? Could you go to him and be accepted by him without judgment, without him saying, don't be soft, don't be weak? Were you made to feel, some kind of way when you were in those vulnerable moments? Because a lot of men talk about that, about, yeah, my dad was present, and yeah, we may have had conversations, but there were certain subjects that were kind of off limits, because dad was gonna respond a little bit differently, because to him it might have seemed again soft, it might have seemed passive, it might have seemed you being overly emotional, not recognizing the fact that as men, just like women, there's no shame in you experiencing hurt, there's no shame in you experiencing sadness, there's no shame in you experiencing any of those things. And so I think this would be a good point for us to kind of delve in a little bit more about what is that. If we could put a definition, not only for ourselves but for our listeners, what is true presence of a dad being in the home? What does that really mean for you, and in particular that dad and his son? What does presence look like?
Man,
What
that's a
would you
good
say
one.
to that, Carl?
I think, oh man, first of all, Maurice, I had to kind of, when he was talking about football games and stuff like that, uh, like as a boy coming up, and we like to play sports, football, basketball, whatever, baseball. We want to see our dad in the stands. It'll give you that extra push, that extra everything. Like everybody around you, they dads and mom come, and then now you gotta just you just chilling with your teammates. That's it. You don't even look in the stands because ain't nobody there. So, but if you want to be able to look in the stands and see your dad over there cheering you on, that'll give you that extra oomph. Like, okay, I'm finna show out today. So it ain't no showing out. Either it's in you to show out, because you ain't gonna get the extra.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So he
I
had.
get it.
So it's like he has to be there. They have to know you gotta be there, man. It's not that hard for me. It seemed like just to be there.
Yeah.
But another thing, going off there, I had to address that. But another thing, like just for a male to be in the house, just giving you the talks, just late night, come in the room, hey, Carl, hey, Joseph, hey, Maurice, hey, let me talk to you for a minute. How your day going? Sit down. How was your day going today at school? What you do? Let me know. Then we'll get some stuff off our chest. We can talk about something. What happened with what happened with your teacher? Oh, okay, well, and then I get him time to lead you in the right direction. Lead you in the right direction. Even when you get, like going to college, or maybe somebody want to go to the Army or to the Navy or to the Marine. Give you some insight and leads you into that, and not lead you into something else where you making your own decision. You don't even go that direction. So just give you that direction that you need in your life, to be present. That's one thing I know I want to say.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, brother Carl, you're saying, I'm hearing the buzzwords that I'm hearing is my dad there to support me?
Right.
Is my dad there to give me sound advice when I don't know, perhaps maybe don't know what directions I should be going? Is he pouring into me? Is he
Right.
helping me build up those skill sets that when I grow up to be a man of my own and have my own family and have my own household, well, I know what to do and how to respond in certain situations. That's what I'm hearing from you as we piece together this
Right.
definition of presence. Dr. Maurice,
Yes.
what we had to add to that?
I think the definition for me is this: intentionally being there with purpose. It's so much, and then again, we have to look at it from different perspectives. Within the context of our podcast, I'm talking about the African American home, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talking about that Black family. It's not just being there to watch the football game with, but intentionally teaching our sons what it means to be a man. So that means that you intentionally be there in your presence with purpose. It's so much that our young men long for, that you just, if you're going to be a father, you got to be intentional about wanting to teach them certain things. But here's the dilemma, brothers. Here's the dilemma. How can a father intentionally be there for his son when he himself was fatherless? So what is it that he goes off of in being intentional about teaching his son? While I think every man has the ability to think on their own with what they want to do differently from what they did not receive from their own father. However, sometimes there's still no guidance there because of the fatherless that they experience themselves. And so I just think that also, in conclusion to answering this question, man, just be intentional about what you were not taught, and begin to teach that to your own sons, and never feel ashamed to go to another father to seek counsel on what you need to be doing, that even though you had the absence of your father not there, another man who is a father who's doing it the right way, right? Don't be ashamed to seek counsel from them, because you want to be the best father that God has purposed you to be.
Love that. And so when I sum up what I'm hearing from you, the key word I'm hearing here is transparency.
Yeah.
I need my dad to be transparent with me.
Yeah.
Just even if transparent involves not just his strengths, but his weaknesses.
Right.
Because then it makes it okay for me to have vulnerabilities, for me to have weaknesses.
Absolutely.
That doesn't make me any less of a man. It makes me a human being. We got strengths, we got weaknesses. And if I could see my dad keeping it real with me and let me know that, hey, I went through it too, son. You are not alone. I was emotional when I was a kid growing up. I was like that. And this is how you process when you're in those moments, when you're in those situations, my son. Yeah. That, I think that goes a long way, because kind of tying back to what I was saying earlier about some young men growing up with their dads, and even if the dad was physically present in the home, not being able to talk about certain things. And you should never have that kind of, from a father to a son. There should be nothing that son should be fearful or ashamed to talk to his dad about, and not understand, not so much that his dad has to agree with everything that he's coming from, but to still accept him as his son, to still show him love, to still to still again pour into him as best as he can. And but you also, brother, Dr. Maurice, you also made the point, which I think is a very important point, is sometimes that lack of your father being present for you is that he didn't have somebody to be present for him.
Absolutely.
So we tie back into our original question, was what did being a man look like for you?
Yeah.
Well, if I struggled to be able to define that from my own dad, but then he also had the same struggle, then now we got a generational situation to break. At some point we need to break that, but there's nothing to say that we can't break it together, that we can't heal it together. There's an opportunity for that. And then going back to the scripture, this is where God can fill that gap.
I guess I do have a question, Moderator Roberts, and that is this, brother. With our question tonight, this is very pertinent, that has been pressed upon my heart with what we're talking about. When we talk about God being a father to the fatherless, gathering his sons and teaching them, does that indicate that man has to have a relationship with God in order for God to gather him to teach him? Or are we saying that this man does not have to have a relationship with the Lord, that God will still teach him if he so desires? Is this being taught by God dependent upon a relationship or not? That's pressing to me. And I like to know the views of our brothers.
If I were to answer that, I would say I don't think God would not step into your life just because your dad doesn't have a personal relationship with him. I think if anything, sometimes God can pour into you as the son that is fatherless, and perhaps ignite something in you that leads not only you but perhaps your father to having that relationship. Like when I think about my dad, I mean, obviously I was raised by my mom. I knew of my dad. I had an opportunity to see him from time to time over the years growing up, but he was not actively present in the home. But one of the things that I do remember in the earlier years, my dad wasn't, a man of God, and he wasn't a church going man. He wasn't talking about his word or nothing like that. We never had any of those type of conversations. But I think what can happen is over time, as God pours into one of his sons, as he did pour into me, and of course, your dad being able to reflect on not only the good things that he's done in life, but the mistakes that he's made. I think God can make a connection for the both of you. And you fast forward in life and you see there's the potential there for you to see your father having that relationship with God. When it came into those later years of life, well into my adulthood, I saw a different man in my father. I saw a man who was serving in his church, being a deacon in his church, and doing other things of that nature, trying to operate in godliness. And I have to laugh about it sometimes. When he's, of course, he's been passed away now, since 2006. But when I think about my life today and the example that I had, if I specifically look at him as that example, I am doing some of those same things in life in terms of my commitment to God and my activity in church and things of that nature. So, again, I don't think that I don't want anybody to think that, well, hey, just because my dad, wasn't into church or into God or whatever, that means that God can't step into your life. He not only can he bring other men into your life that could be a good influence to you, but I also think that he can pour into you directly and train you up to be perhaps a man who follows a different path perhaps than what your dad did. And you may end up being the very example that your dad needs to see so that he too can have an opportunity to align with that. So, so I think that's a very good question, Dr. Maurice, that you brought up. Because I was thinking about that as well, just in terms of, again, and I know we're still locked in on this initial introductory question, but this is a big topic here.
Yeah.
When we talk about who taught us how to be a man, who taught us what that looked like. For the purposes of our podcast, we're not only are we talking, not only we primarily speaking, of course, from a Black experience.
Right.
I think we would be remiss if we did not talk about the fact of, what if my dad didn't know the Lord? What if my dad didn't have that? Because his instruction, his guidance to us is going to be different if he's teaching us from a worldly perspective versus whether he's
Absolutely.
speaking us from a godly perspective. So those things do matter as well.
Right.
Dr. Melvin, Brother Melvin, do you have some, what is your input on this? What are we talking about here?
Man, it's a super great topic. And my dad was never in my life, and the few times I did see him, right, it wasn't anything about spiritual, wasn't anything about the Bible, wasn't anything about going to church. It's just something that my mother instilled in me at a very young age. I had to go to church, and the people that kept us, uh, they was part of a Pentecostal, so we went to church every day. And at the age of 17, I started working in youth ministry, started working with kids, and it's something that was, I guess, reared. And of course, I see other men that I wanted to emulate. I didn't want to be, man, God, I don't want to be like my daddy. I wanted to do something totally different. And I think it's so important that, because I get to talk to people every day. And as I talk to them, right, and as I'm on a podcast with 22 young men, and I'm the senior.
And it's so amazing to listen to the young men. And everybody doesn't have a Christian history or Christian background. But believe me, those young men are so hungry, and they are really, really, like I said, want to find out more and more each week. And now we see out of the 12 that really, didn't know anything about God. Now you got them start interesting into it because we didn't browbeat them about Scripture. We just talk rationally thinking, talking, and I was the Bible that they got to read along with some other people. And I think that it's so important as being practical with people. Like I said, Mr. Motivator, you, Mr. Joseph, Dr. Macmillan. It is so important as because we're the only Bible that a person may read. So we have to make sure that we are leading and guiding in a good way. Because if I had to do it over again, I would want my daddy to be in my life. Now I knew my daddy is being an alcoholic. I didn't want to do that. He was very abusive. I didn't want to do that. But that's what I seen. But I knew that wasn't the way to go.
Right.
It's good
And
stuff. That's
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I mean, as I, grew up, it was just something that was instilled in me from my mother. And back in the day, as I was growing up as a young kid, I used to give my mother Father's Day card. Reality hit me. She could never be my father. I was on KHVN several years ago talking about just the importance of that. She could teach me how to be a boy. She couldn't teach me how to be a man. And but I love her for. I mean, I love the ground she walked on. She's not here, and she passed away 2 years ago. When she passed, a part of me passed too. But my thing is, we need to capture the moment any chance we get to try to instill some things into our young brothers
Yeah.
because social media, man, it's taking them. They're teaching them the game systems. They're getting. Matter of fact, I can tell you an incident with my nephew. He got befriended on somebody with a game system. He ready to fly off to Sacramento and spend about. I think he told a young lady he had $4,500. He told him bring his money. They were gonna have a good time. He was ready to go, but his dad, wasn't in his life. And of course, I get the phone call. I had to really, really sit down and do some guidance with him so he could really understand. Now he has a better understanding on it, and I think it's important. And because we all get busy, and I remind people, 45 minutes a day goes a long way. It doesn't take a lot of time, but 45 minutes. It's 24 hours in a day. But if we can spend 45 minutes with our children, because we talk about sons, but girls need their dads also.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And it's important that because I teach my daughter, tell you, she wasn't going, her daddy didn't play. She wasn't going to be messing around with a bum. She teach her girls the same way. She's not going to take care of another man. You know, I mean, I'm going to get off my tangent, but man, I just thank God for the podcast.
Yeah, I think you brought up two things jumped out at me. Well, first of all, I appreciate you sharing as you have your transparency. Two things hit me as you were talking. One, you spoke about the social media presence. Unfortunately, what at least what's been my observation, and I think you brothers would agree, what scares me about social media and just media platforms in general, particularly when it comes to men, I think the danger that we're seeing a lot of is we're seeing less of what we're doing right now and more of, in terms of speaking to our men, more of feminizing men, making them think that certain ways to behave are okay. And we're not just talking about like, do I have emotions or anything like that? Like we're literally seeing young men being groomed, being messaged to in a way to make things that we know are not of God, that we know are not of what a young man should be, feminizing it, and these young men are getting comfortable with that. I think that's a big issue. And then, Brother Melvin, I like the fact that you brought up about the impact of mom on your life, because even though your dad was physically there, mom was the one who was pouring into you about God. Mom was in there doing certain things that probably were more of a dad role, to the point to where you're giving mom Father's Day cards. And again, I was raised in a single parent home by my mom. And so as you're speaking to that, and I even wrote about that in my book, and the fact, and I want us to keep this in mind as well, even though we are a male panel, speaking on male issues, we do have female listeners that are tuning in, trying to understand us, trying to figure out, how we tick, what makes us tick, how we think. And so one of the things that I did want us to capture before we moved on was what happens when being a man, the teaching of that, what that looks like. What is the good and the bad when you're in a situation when the mom is the one who's having to do that? I think there can be some good in it, but then there's also that line, as Brother Melvin mentioned, she can raise me as a son, but she's really not equipped, and that's no insult or disrespect to any woman, but she's really not equipped to teach me how to be a man, but yet she's my primary caregiver. She's the one who's around me the most. I'm curious to hear your brother's thoughts on speaking to that, when mom is the one that carries that weight and that burden to teach her son how to be a man. How does she do it without the risk of, again, perhaps weakening him, perhaps without smothering him, without allowing him the opportunity to make mistakes, but at the same time, again, equipping him? Because there's some women who are taking care of their sons who come from a bitter experience. Perhaps the man that they were with, that created that son, was not a good brother. He did some things, and she may be dealing with some unresolved hurts, and that gets pressed upon the son. I've been in relationships in my past where I saw the mom treat the son different than she treated the daughter. And a lot of it had to do with the son reminding her of the dad that wasn't good to her, or the son reminding her of the dad that she didn't have in her life growing up. So what do you guys say about that dynamic? I'll start with you, Carl.
It's kind of interesting to me, because diving into that, the woman taking care of the little son or the male, I kind of wonder why some of these guys are turning out with the feminine tendencies. It's just being timid. I think a male not being there, they kind of look at the woman or the mom or whatever, and kind of follow what they do and how they act. And I think that's what makes a lot of our guys, our sons and brothers coming up, film kind of with these tendencies of wanting to be a female. I don't know, because I mean I don't understand it, but that's what I think that leads them that way. I don't know. Y'all can chime in and see whatever your thoughts is, but I think that's kind of part of the problem, because I think you have some moms out there, they get mad at the little kid or whatever, and whatever she going through, and yelling at the kid or the son or whatever, and then it kind of puts them in this shell or something, and then he comes out, just like, I mean, to the world, which that it's okay to be whatever he is. I mean, I don't know, because I get kind of like, if I talk about it, that I'm offending somebody. So
I guess, in other words, I guess to follow up on what you just said, I'll hit you with this. Should we say that it's mom's responsibility to find adequate substitutes for the absence of the dad in that life, or is it just on the mom to per se to just do the best you can, and and that's good enough? Who has the role of responsibility of making sure that happens? I see you, Brother Melvin. What chime in on that for us?
I'm gonna kind of back up a little bit because I've had a parent that was mad at me. 16-year-old son. He was sitting down using the bathroom. I mean, we doing the number one. That's something that she taught was teaching him.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing to her is, you doing the number one, you can stand up, right? But she got offended, and I think it's important as women, when you are trying to raise that young man, you know, reach out to some men, reach out to some organizations, some mentoring groups, reach out. Uh, I know big brothers and big sisters stay full, but there are different other organizations. There are other, like I say, men in the church that you just sit back, evaluate, and watch them, where they can continue, can maybe assist in helping to breathe life into that young man. Because I'm like, she really went into me, literally. But my thing is, that's reason you have when you go into a men's stall bathroom, you have a urinal, right? And then of course you have some toilets for when you do the number two. But when women go in, they just have, the toilets. And I explained to her, but she got very offended. And I think it's not a point about trying to offend anybody. It's a point about, the teachings. Because I think it's so important as we me every chance I get a chance, I want to try to do what I can to help assist a young lady or a young man into understanding some things, because even maybe the way an individual talk, and some young men are soft spoken, but in our business, what we say, you soft spoken, he may be straddling the fence. That may not be it. But I think it's all about, us getting in there and trying to work with them, work with many young men as possible, and to try to teach others so they can be able to do the same thing. And I think that's where, churches should do more. A lot of times we kind of stay in our shell or stay right there in the four walls. And if you we preaching the gospel and talking about the gospel of God. He went to the church, the synagogue, to get revived. He did everything outside of them four walls. We get comfortable inside them four walls, but I'm gonna get off my tangent. But
Oh,
bless
you said some good stuff there, man. And I,
you.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
that's and again, these are one of these conversations that it's hard to stay on script because it triggers something else. So I'm to you, Dr. Maurice. I'm interested in hearing your perspective about what is mom's role or responsibility in teaching her son how to be a man. But of course, you being a pastor, what is the church's role in making sure that the young men be men,
Well,
regardless of what their households look like?
right. Well, Brother Roberts, I think before the church can take a role in, now mind you, deacons, men of the church, they absolutely, if their intent is to get into the lives of some of these young men and be a father figure. Number one, I think that we don't want to ever step over the boundaries of a father that may be already present, right? But then secondly, I think if we're talking about those young men that are fatherless, I think before the church can step in, it has to be the intent of the mother to recognize that she can only raise her son, but she can never teach her son how to be a man. Only men can teach boys how to be men. And so I think if the intent of the mother, the single mother, if she has a desire to want, and I think that's the key, she has to want a man to come in. And I think me and Pastor Porter and brother Lee, we talked about this in our last podcast on last month, and that is intentionally want someone to step in without interference.
Hmm.
So when you see this man being a little tough, a little rough with this young man, listen, it's not the time for you to start. Oh, that's my baby. Well, that's the
Mm-hmm.
problem right there, right? Your baby gonna grow up and not have respect, not have the things that he needs to have as a man, and learn those things that he needs to learn as a man. Because again, you're babying, and I think I saw somebody in the comments saying that, So and it reminds me, and I tell you, Brother Lee, I still crack up at what you said last time. When you started whipping, I think it was your nephew, and then she started crying, right? Like, I mean, what are we really doing here? What are you crying for, right? But see, that's the thing. The reality is this: if you want a man to come in, and listen, I'm gonna tell you what I have to first derive from recognizing that you can't teach him how to be a man.
Mm.
A woman has to get to that point. I cannot teach him. I can raise him as a child. And I think that's the word that we ought to use. Raise him as a child as he grows up into being a man. But to teach him things that a man needs to know, it takes another man. And so I think the church can only step in when that mother is willing to accept the fact that she needs a male role model. And listen, if a woman does that, she is in accordance with what Scripture teaches. Titus chapter 2, verses 1 through 8 talks to the older men, right? Saying older men teach the younger men. And I think too, it boils down to men intentionally want to also invest in our boys, right? I strongly don't believe that a man should only invest in one that's his blood. I think that there's a cliche that we say that it takes a village to raise a child. And I think that's so true, because if we have a desire as men to invest in other young men, to see the potential that's within them by us pouring into them transformative information, transformative skills that they need to be a man in this everyday world, especially there is a distinctive in our teaching in how to be a black man and looking for the things that we have to deal with based upon the color of our skin. There's a major difference even in that dynamic. And so I think it just has to be intention for mothers to want to recognize that and then talk to that man that she feels comfortable, whether it be a family member or a person at the church, but intentionally want to invest in this young man. And I think sometimes that's where the problem also lies, that we just don't have enough men that have the time or even the will and the intent to want to invest in some of these young men, right? Because it's easier to say, well, if they haven't had a father in all this time, what my teaching is going to do? It can do a lot, right? Because you're meeting them right where they are with what they need.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. And again, as you were saying that, and I was trying to kind of summarizing it for our ladies who are tuning in, our moms who are tuning in. I think you hit it right on the spot. It's like, first, you have to acknowledge the fact that this is something that you can't do. You can raise him, but you can't teach him how to be a man. You need to tap into resources that are available out there to connect him with those men out there who are willing to step up and equipped to step up to pour into that young man. And it doesn't have to be a man that you're in relationship with, like this is my new man or anything like that. He just has to be a man who is of good character, of good integrity, who you can trust around your son. We're not worried about him doing anything harmful or anything that inappropriate with your son. But if he meets those standard criteria that we would want with anybody around our children, then yes. And you, like you said, you're intentional about wanting that for your son, then that's the starting point. And again, acknowledging the fact that, hey, this is bigger than me. I can't do this. But then I think one of the other things that you mentioned, which is also very critical, is that once you let me in, if I'm the man of choice that you have allowed to step in, whether I come from the church, from the Boys and Girls Club, whoever, once you let me in, then you got to let me do my thing. You got to let me, you can't let me in and say, I'm so glad to have you here for my son. But then you want to tell me how to pour into him. See, there we go back to you trying to tell me how to do my thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and I understand there are women who, for a variety of reasons that are hesitant, they're resistant because they've been the one that's been protective and caring for that son and all of that. Whether it comes down to, I don't want you to yell at him, or whether it comes down to, especially when you have scenarios where the man in question becomes the new guy as far as relationship, whether he's the boyfriend or even if he comes in and now he's the husband / stepdad. Does he have limitations on raising your son? If your son is out of order,
right,
and he needs to deal with that, whether it be verbally deal with that, or if the child is of that age and he need to, had that hand put on him. Are you okay with that? Do you trust this man enough to pour into um, that situation? So we're seeing some of our comments. They say we need men to understand fatherhood overrides failed relationships. Yes, you can't blame the guy that's stepping in for whatever has happened in the past. And like you said, where the mom has to be intentional on who she's bringing in. I think it's also important for the man to, before he indulges, even if he has good intentions, am I dealing with a mom, particularly not only just a mom, but a mom who I might be entering into a relationship with? Is she healed from whatever happened beforehand? Because if she's not, while she might desire me to be in that child's life and in her life, she may not be ready for that. The child may not. He may not be ready for that if they haven't gone through those proper steps. So I think I don't ever want to make it seem like it's all on mom, and it's on, if you don't do this, it's a mom and whoever that male figure is, stepping in. And then as that male figure who's stepping in, again, you have to be mindful of, why are you stepping in? What is your motivation?
Right.
Don't step into the son's life because you're trying to get with mom.
Right.
Don't use the son to get to mom. Maybe if I buy him a few toys, take him a couple of places, then that gets me in the door with mom. And then once you get what you wanted to get out of mom, you ditch mom.
Yeah.
And while mom might get over it, you never know the traumatic effect that you have left behind on that son if he's already experienced men walking out on him. And then he thought that there was a ray of hope. This nice guy came in and he was doing this for me and that for me, things that I was missing, but he was just using me to get to mom. So brothers who are listening, don't do that either.
Right.
Because, while I'm not condoning or promoting that behavior, if you're going to go down that path, then you need to understand who's all being impacted, because it may not just be the woman that you're pursuing. You got a young man in this situation who's looking at that, and you could be causing further damage. You could be opening up that wound even wider that he's already dealing with and trying to process through, just because. And again, in some of those situations, and I've experienced that, being that dad who, being that man, I should say, who stepped into a relationship with the woman who had a son who I treated like as if he was my own, loved on him like he was my own. But then when that point came when me and mom no longer worked out anymore, I felt worse about him than I did about her. No offense to her, but it was just like, what is he gonna do now?
Right.
This is gonna break his heart. I actually stayed longer, truth be told, because of him.
Yeah.
Not even because of his mom.
Right.
Not understanding how that might. If I gotta leave, I gotta leave in the best, smoothest way possible to minimize the damage, because he's gonna feel there's probably more than she probably gonna be with somebody in a week or two. He gonna be still reeling from this, So I'm sorry, Dr. Murray, we wanted to.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say too, brother Robert, that listen, if the intent is real and right, real and right, one can have a relationship with the son even if the relationship doesn't work.
That's true.
If it's real and right. Right, if the intent is. But two, I want to piggyback just on something you said too. I think our sisters need to know, and brothers, if y'all agree, please help me in pushing this statement. And that is, when you push a man away from being the man that you have asked him to be towards your son, it's hard to get that man to come back sometimes. When you have pushed him away by saying, oh, don't yell at him, don't do this, don't do it. Well, then listen, we feel as if, hey, then you really don't need me.
Right.
And sometimes when you do that, it's hard to get him back in if you really, you come to a realization, oh, you know what, I was wrong, right? When she said I was wrong, I should have let you do your job. So be careful with that. But then two, I think what helps in situations of what you were talking about, Brother Roberts, I do believe, because I was in a relationship like this, that it requires the mother to want to help foster the relationship between this man and her son. when there's a lack of the mother trying to help foster that, because listen, coming into a relationship and then you have a son that she has there. Listen, sometimes if that's not our child, we don't know how to go in and have that type of relationship. We make attempts, but two, I think what helps with those attempts and can make the process smoother is when that mother help foster. Listen, and it's more so on his side, on the son's side, to help him engage with this man when this man is willingly and intentionally trying to engage with you, and there's purpose behind it. So I think it helps a lot too, to our mothers out there that are listening. Help foster that relationship between the guy that you're with, if that's who you want, to give instructions to that boy or that son of yours. Help foster that to where it becomes a smoother process for them to engage. But if you're not helping by telling the son, listen, you going with brother, you going with Mr. Roberts, or you going with Mr. Carl, or you got to foster that. Not expect for the guy to come in and try to build that, right? He can build it once there has been some foster into it to help the process, if it's a smooth process to enter into, I'll put it that way. And when that gentleman feels that, okay, I can now take it from here, then the relationship can be strengthened. But it does take mothers to have to foster that with their sons.
Absolutely. I think you piggybacked on that perfectly. So this is one of those conversations, man, that can go so many different directions as it has tonight. Because as soon as you hit one point, then another thing pops up. I do want to, because I know we do have some other questions that we wanted to try to tap in the short time that we have.
Hey, real quick,
yes,
Joseph,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. And somebody asked a question about boys doing chores. Man, I think it's great for boys, young men to do chores. Matter of fact, I did all types of chores my mother had me, and I thank God for it, because when I went in the military and I had so much diversity in it, where I could mend some socks, I knew how to cook, I knew how to wash, I knew how to clean, and I think it's great to have that good balance in there, right? For as a young man, what you guys think?
Yeah. Well, one thing you can't consider to be women's work that you're teaching a boy, right? It's just everyday practical skill that a man just should know in life and should have embedded within them. Because at the end of the day, let's be real, when we become men, no woman likes to see a man that's not clean, not clean cut, not clean about himself or his environment. And listen, a woman will soon let you know that she's no longer interested in you when she discovered that you don't have those basic skills like chores that you grew up on to make you just a better human being in life. So I think that's a wonderful thing for everybody to have chores, and not just classify, oh, that's just for women, that women should just teach girls how to do that. No, listen, I can outcook some women, and I promise you I can back up what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it prevents those young boys who will become men someday from having this sense of entitlement.
Right.
In the sense that when they meet that young lady,
Absolutely.
that they think that they're just supposed to, sit back and, snap their fingers and, do this and do that and take care of this and take care of that. Like somebody is supposed to take care of it. Like I said, that's now where you start to enter into the syndrome of mama's boy.
Yeah.
That's when we start going there, because, mama's boy doesn't mean, the man who loves his mom and he's in close relationship with it. If it meant that, then call me that. I'm mama's boy, because I love my mother deeply. I'm like Brother Melvin. I worship the ground she walked on. But my mom taught me, chores. My mom taught me, and really the appropriate word that's above even the chores is taught me accountability. It's about accountability. Yes, she desired for me to someday have a woman who would take care of me, and meaning take care of me in terms of taking care of me from the standpoint of loving on me and appreciating me to the point where she didn't have an issue with preparing me a hot meal. She didn't have an issue with washing clothes, but at the same time, she didn't raise me in the sense of, that doesn't mean that you don't ever step in and help out your significant other, or if you don't have somebody, that doesn't mean that you can't function on your own, that you can't cook yourself a meal, that you can't clean your house, you don't know how to put that properly, you can't wash your clothes, like you said, brother, Dr. Maurice, about the things that as a man we need to know, proper grooming and keeping ourselves in order, because what we look like and how we function, that's what we're going to attract.
Right. And listen, I think you would agree with me, Brother Roberts, that listen, we live in a day and time now that this younger generation of women that are coming up, they're not taking care of no man in that facet. And they're telling you off the back that listen, if you come this way to be taken care of, you might as well find somebody else.
She's like, I'm not your mama.
I'm not your mama. And I think, listen, ladies, I think we set young boys up for failure when we make them out to be mama's boys in that context, to where we make them think that when they get into a relationship with a woman, that she's supposed to do the same things that your mother did. Well, no, she's going to do things like that, but she shifts in her position and title. She don't do things like your mother did. She now does things like she's supposed to as your wife. And there's a big difference. While there may be some similarities, which is cooking the meal and things of that nature, but there's just some things that are so different. And so I think that we have to learn how to not set our boys up for failure with giving them this mindset that a woman's supposed to take care of them. Because in this generation, they're telling them, especially with women making more money and their careers are, they're telling you, I'm not about to take care of you. Either you come. I think the terminology is what you bring to the table, right? Not that you just about to sit at my table, but what are you bringing to this table along with what I'm bringing?
Yes, we had a comment in our chat about, and I think it was this kind of ties into what we're talking about. And we talked about a little bit about this earlier, about how does that man get to the point of being fathered by the Lord? Like, how does where does I know we talked about earlier about who's responsible for that, and what happens if he doesn't have that growing up, if the dad in his home or the lack of the dad in the home, who's responsible for making sure that he's connected to God? Does it go back to, hey, mom, make sure that you get him with godly men, or or if the dad is in the home and let's just say he doesn't have a relationship with God, what should he be doing to possibly facilitate that, even if it's not his thing for whatever the reason? How does he make sure that he's not necessarily denying his son to make the proper choice as to whether, if that's the path that he wants to go? What is there an answer to that? Is there a way, or is there a way to just get him in a setting where he can make that decision and accept, Christ for himself and know Christ for himself? And what do you guys think about that?
I think you have to know Christ for yourself. I think you have to know I think everybody had their own relationship with God. So just like I have my own relationship, it's hard coming up, and coming up not knowing the Bible and stuff like that. I was in church as a kid, but as an adult, I got out of the church. So, but then I end up having my own relationship with him. So knowing I had my own relationship and I could talk to him, and I could talk to him anytime, it helped me out just having that own relationship with him. I thought at first that I was this bad person because I didn't go to church and I wasn't in church. But then I didn't go to church for different reasons. I would get around Christians that would be cheating on their wives. I talk to them and they say, this one particular guy, he was like, yeah, I got my wife, but then I got a girlfriend too. And I'm like, I thought you was a pastor.
Right.
So me thinking, I'm listening to that like, why should I go to church if he doing this and that, and he's supposed to be a man of God? So it kind of sent me in a kind of direction, and that's where, again, I didn't have that father figure to teach me. So now I'm just going on my own judgment. So I just figured I just have my own relationship with God.
Okay. So that brings up the question of, is surrender necessary? That was brought up in the comments. And again, I think like I said, this is a challenging component to it all, because like you said, if you don't grow up in a home, whether it's, again, both parents there or just the mom there, if you don't grow up in that atmosphere where God is made a priority, not only made a priority, but growing up in a household where God is not forced on that child, where they may be kids. There are kids right now who grow up in the church, but they grow up because they're made to go, not necessarily understanding the why this is important. It's you go because that's what we go to church and that's it. And that's what you do, which to your point, Brother Carl, a lot of times once those kids reach adulthood, they kind of go out because now I'm not going because I'm being made to go rather than being it poured into me. Like there's a reason why I'm having you go here because there's a man that you need to know, and he's God, and he's the one who created you, and he's the one who's, if you follow his word, he's going to help you navigate those challenging times in life. He's going to teach you some things that not only that I learned, but some things that I had to learn over time, it's kind of the perspective that you put into it as to how that goes. If that lane is not set up for that son coming up, then yeah, he might find himself as an adult having to figure it out. But it goes back to our lead scripture that we talked about at the very beginning about how God can step in the lives of those who are fatherless. Right. He finds us, even if we grew up in the church, and I grew up in the church, and then I drifted. But basically, my drift happened when I went to college. I lost my mind. I was free. I was independent. I didn't have rules to to adhere to. I was able to do my thing, and I drifted for probably about a decade. But what we don't always know is that God was there all along. Yeah, and He was letting me learn some of those lessons. He was letting me bump my head, and eventually it got to a point where he didn't completely take me out, but he let me hit a rock bottom moment where I came to the realization that only he could get me through this. Yeah. And that was that moment when I came back to him, and he welcomed me with open arms and said, "I've been waiting on you." Yeah. Okay, so let's get you straight. Let's get you back on track. And I've been back on track ever since. That doesn't mean that I've never had any shortcomings or fall offs or anything like that along the way. But I'm back with him. I'm back on his side of life, and in the years that were to follow, and the gray hairs that are accumulated, you begin to understand. Okay, this is where I need to be. This is why I made some of those mistakes in the past that didn't make sense, that I ain't had no business doing or being a part of or whatever. And it's an ongoing learning process, but at least I'm in the camp that I need to be in versus just being out there doing, what the world would say to do, and putting myself at risk of, of being in jeopardy. So I guess to our dads who are in the home, yes, you do want to, even if that's not your thing, and even if you're not there, want better for your son. Yeah. And if it's just mom, get him connected, whether you're in relationship or not, get him connected with that, because he needs that. And we don't want to minimize or water that down. He needs to have that godly presence in his life. It will save you a lot of headaches and pain, and it will do the same for him. It may even save his life, because these streets are real. And, and you combine that with the influences of media, social media, and everything else that's going on in the world. It's just the stuff that kids have access to today that we didn't have when we were kids. It was a much more controlled environment, even in single parent homes. Now it's just all out, wild out at your fingertips in a couple of seconds. I can get connected to, know about, exposed to whatever it is I want to have in an instant. And, so we always have to kind of keep that in mind as we're delving into that conversation. So,
Robert, I think too, it's about, and I pray that this generational behavior, I don't believe in generational curses. I believe more so in generational behaviors. And that is, let's stop teaching our children to have religion, and let's start teaching them to have a relationship.
Yep.
Because that's why so many can go into the church or grow up in it, right? Go into it, grow up in it, and then easily leave, and sometimes don't come back. And listen, I'm not saying that can't be another person's testimony that I left and I came back. That's perfectly fine. But I think the key to it is teaching them that, hey, you're not just coming to get religion. You're coming to develop a relationship. Because when you develop a relationship, it's easy to leave religion. right? Because religion comes with rules and regulation, but it's not as easy to leave relationships when it's vital to you, and a vital relationship with the Lord, if He's real to you, and if the relationship is real, it's not someone you could just walk away from, because you have a relationship versus religion. And I think for too long, just making our children come to church because that's what we do, that's the wrong, that's going into it wrong. That's the wrong ideology. No, we ought to now want to foster a relationship with the Lord, teaching our children to foster a relationship with the Lord and have one, so that they can, because here's the thing that I was saying earlier about why it's important. Should we have people that are saved? Because the question is, can one be taught by the Lord? Well, here's where my struggles comes in, brothers. And this is the pastor side of me. Without a relationship with the Lord, how can you be taught from someone you don't know? So that's why it's vital to have the relationship with Him, so that you can be open to Him teaching you. Because it's hard for me to be taught from somebody I do not know. And so, so yes, now I agree with you, Brother Roberts. Can God step in and be that father for the fatherless? Yes, He can. But it makes it so much better to be open and receptive to the teaching of the Lord when one has that open relationship with Him. Because again, I repeat, it's hard to be taught from somebody you don't know.
Absolutely. That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Dr. Maurice, Brother Joseph. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think you guys, man, said something so awesome, because here it is. And I tell folks, that's reading I don't browbeat folks with scripture. That's reading I don't, like I said, I was drugged at church. And reading I was drugged at church because they say, oh, that's what Big Mama did. But then when I developed, I was going because of religion. But then when I developed a relationship, it was something totally different.
That's it.
But I had to learn that, but I didn't know that. But I think it's so important that as we show ourselves approved and show that we are worthy, right? And show the God in us, guess what? People are going to be like, man, I want to be just like, and people, a lot of kids call me Uncle Lee. Yeah, man, Uncle Lee, where you get that from? Man, I got it from the best-selling book it is, the Bible.
Absolutely.
That's important. Go ahead, Brother Joe. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just, I didn't mean to cut you off. I know we only have a few minutes left, and I wanted us to have a closeout question. We can answer, of course, for ourselves as well as to our listeners. What would you tell either your younger version of yourself or to a man who's listening today who never had a dad? What would you say to them that can be of encouragement, that could be of good wisdom for them to take a nugget away from tonight? If they didn't learn anything else tonight, what is the takeaway that you would have to tell to your younger self, as well as to those who are tuning in who never had a dad? I'll start with you, Brother Carl.
Okay. That's a good one for me. I'm glad you asked that question. What I would tell a younger me, and if I tell any younger guy out there, get you some therapy, get you some counseling. It'll put you in a whole different direction. If you didn't have a father or anything like that, get you some therapy. Man, I'm telling you, it'll get that monkey off your back. Everything. You talk out with somebody that has that knowledge, and to get everything off your chest will put you in a whole different direction. When you all that stuff that you got on the inside that you need to let out, it'll give you time to let it out. So that's the advice I will get you. Get you some therapy, get some counseling, some good counseling. Stay at it. Don't just get one session or two sessions. Get you up in there till you can get deep and dive into it and get what's in you out of you, so you can be a better you. That's
Love that. And again, and I think we want to emphasize Christian therapy. All therapists are not created equal, and some therapists, even if they're good people, they may be restricted in what they can talk about just because of certain rules and regulations. So you need somebody who's free to incorporate God in that conversation. What about you, Brother Melvin? Final thoughts on that? What would be your message to the fatherless?
Therapy is always good, but of course, fatherless person, man, find somebody that you could target in on, zero in on, right? Hey, I want to be similar to Brother Washington. Man, he has a good family. He's got a good job. Man, he come to church. He be reading his Bible. He's a Sunday school teacher. And from what I see, right, he's an upstanding citizen. So I want to strive to be somebody like Brother Washington. So let me see if I can hook up with him.
Good stuff. Good stuff. How about you, Dr. Maurice?
I think I would say that echoing the same things that Brother Lee, it's never too late to find a man that you desire to look up to and be like. And sometimes that's in the church, sometimes that's in the workplace, sometimes that's it right there in your family. And you have to intentionally make the initiative to want to ask that individual to teach you, right? And then that person that you're asking to teach you have to be willing to want to take the time to do so. Never feel as if just because you grew up fatherless, that there's not a father that wants to help you in teaching you the ways of God. And I often say this, in the words of one of my mentors, who is also a blessed memory now. He said, it's blood that makes us relatives, but it's love that makes us family. And so somebody don't have to be your blood to be your father. But if a man who loves you and cares about you developing, being the God man that God has purposely created you to be in the earth realm, he doesn't have to be your blood, but because of love, he'll teach you and take you on as his own son.
Love that. Love that. And my closing thought I can sum up with in one word, forgiveness.
Yeah.
If you want to ignite your healing, if you want to start that process of you getting over the fact that dad wasn't around, he wasn't present, or his presence was lacking, if you got to forgive.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, and in your forgiveness, it doesn't mean that you're justifying his behavior.
No.
It doesn't mean that you're justifying the fact that he left your mom to raise you and maybe perhaps other siblings, and she didn't have much to work with, or you were out there in the streets and you was doing your thing, doing whatever. It doesn't mean any of that. It's not, well, I should say, you don't want to get caught up in that. Those are relevant things, and you have a right to feel the way you feel about them. But if you want to ignite that healing, if you want to be able to move to those next steps forward, the forgiveness has to kick in, because to withhold it, it only impacts you, because the forgiveness is for you. So if you're not forgiving, then it's like the equivalent of holding poison inside of you and thinking that it's somehow hurting, in this scenario, hurting your dad.
Right.
And a shoot is hurting. So embrace the forgiveness. Embrace that forgiveness.
Amen.
So, brothers, this has been an awesome conversation as always. We thank our listeners for tuning in, joining in with us this evening. 90 minutes does not do full justice of a conversation like this, but we did the best we could with the time we had. This could easily trickle into a multiple hours of conversation. But again, we hope that you got something out of this that you can apply in your respective lives, or you can pass on that message to someone else who needs to hear it. So check out the replays, check out any of that information that we've talked about tonight. And again, apply it to your respective lives. And of course, before we go, we do want to remind you of the women's conference that's coming up on February 28th. If any of you have special ladies in your life that you believe would benefit from being a part of something like this, we definitely would encourage you to get your tickets today. Again, this is the Keeping It All Together Women's Conference, February 28th, hosted by our very own Stephanie Seaton. She is the keynote speaker for this event. There's going to be food, speakers, activities. It's going to be a good time. So whether you haven't got your ticket today, get registered, or if you feel it upon your heart to do so, you might bless somebody with a ticket so that they can attend. So do keep that in mind. Mark your calendars accordingly and participate in that opportunity. You will be blessed, and it will not be something that you regret, carving out a couple hours or so out of your day to enjoy time in fellowship with God, with godly women, and just talking about the things that are important to keeping it all together. So with that said, we thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to my wonderful brothers on the panel, Dr. Maurice, Brother Melvin, Brother Carl. I know we lost our Brother Ricardo earlier to some technical difficulties, but that's okay. And all the other brothers who couldn't join us this evening, they are here in spirit. and supporting us as always. So again, we appreciate you tuning in. We love you. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you next time on fourth Sunday of next month, where we'll come back again talking about some powerful, exciting topics, primarily geared towards men, obviously, of course, because this is my brother's keeper. But of course, this conversation is definitely open to men, women, and people from all walks of life, no matter where you're coming from. There's something to learn. There's some nuggets to be dropped and grasped hold to, as we do our best to be raw and open and transparent and pouring ourselves out to you, and letting other men know that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to go through, but that you do have a supporting cast here that loves on you and wants to be there for you. So with that said, have a great rest of your evening. We look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.
Thank you for watching My Brother's Keeper podcast, a safe space for men here on the Stephanie M. Seton Sunday Show channel. Healing, empowerment, transformation.